2 children.
Well, my wife.
What we call
School.
All right, so Cassie.
Oh, and you're near the harbor, right? The National Harbor.
National Harbor, that's a little away from me, but it's, yeah, it's,
and Kevin is in
I've
Miami.
been over there, but it's quite a distance. I'm trying to think. I'm down near where when you go, you want to go to the Capitol and the White House and places like that.
Okay.
I'm near Washington and the things in Washington people come here to see.
Okay. Could you see the fireworks from where your area is?
I could see it, but I didn't look last night. I have seen it year after year, and sometimes I go down there, but this time my great-granddaughter,
Move the table just a little bit closer to that gentleman, so you're making space for yourself. And see if you can sit over here, and you point this at her mouth like that.
Okay.
So not like that, like that, right? And I'll tell you. And just be careful not to shake it too much. Just hold it gently. And so it's like that at her mouth, right? Okay. All right. So Gladys is going to tell you how this started for her.
Okay, so you want me to sit here, or you want
can stay right there.
You want to stay here? Okay.
And where she was riding in a tram or something. She saw a sign. A streetcar. So Gladys, you want to tell Cassie
Sure,
what you were telling me?
Well, let's start out first. Tell me just your name and
Gladys Otey, O-T-E-Y. That's my marriage name. I was originally Gladys Combs from Missouri, and I came to Washington because my sister had come to Washington. My great aunt was there who had a job, so I almost died until, I was a teacher, school teacher, and I almost died until my school gave out, for the summer, because my sister and I are just like that, Everywhere she goes, I go, and the other way around. So anyhow, the day my school ended, I had gone one summer. I had to come to Washington because my sister was living with a great aunt who worked for somebody, a rich man who worked with trains and things, and they have people that they hire to take care of the house and everything. And so my sister had gone to live with her for the summer. And of course, I couldn't. I was under contract to finish my year. The day my school let out, I had been at a teachers' meeting. So when I got home, the person in the place where they get telegrams and things had stayed up until 12 o'clock at night to give me this telegram. And the telegram was that I had a job in Washington because I had taken a course in typing and everything, and I had applied, and I had this job ready for me. And of course, nothing could stop me then. My sister was in Washington, and my sister and I everywhere followed each other. And after that, I lived, ever since then in Washington. And I worked for, where did I work for? I've worked several places. I'm trying to think of the first one, but I can't remember that. Mm-hmm. But the last one was with the Air Force. I worked at the Pentagon with the Air Force Office of Public Affairs. And well, after that, it's a long story. I don't know what all you are interested. But anyhow, you want to get but the airplane. Okay, when I was coming home, see, we had old streetcars then, and they had to put these placards inside telling you what they had to offer, They want you to make money to do their things. And I looked up there and it says, come and learn to fly a plane. And, I said, well, that sounds interesting. I'd like to do that. So I went, got made all arrangements. And you should have seen the man's face when he found out it was a girl, because they didn't have any girls down there. But there was absolutely nothing he could do about it. He didn't say men only or anything like that. So, so anyhow, I went on out and signed up. And this fellow who worked for Mr. Green was a young man, and I must say a very patient person. So I think he kind of helped, tell him that, yeah, he would take control. And that's how my flying began. So I just loved it. I used to fly, and then I went to, where did I go? Oh, I'm trying to think. See, my mind. See, I'm 95 years old.
So is that your picture out there on the placard? When they have there's a picture of a female student. Is that one of you?
Yeah, but see, I wasn't a student. I was a student of the airplane, but I wasn't the student that most of those men had come from. I was just, like I say, a worker. I had gone to school at Lincoln University in Missouri.
Oh, I know people who've gone to Lincoln. I love that school. It's a great tradition. Is that where your parents went? Is that you were one of those families who everyone's gone to Lincoln?
No, my parents, they were country people, farmers and everything. So, but no, I was the first in my family to go to Lincoln, and I had some people there who, people that I worked for. And they helped me because one of the men there, one of the farmers' sons or somebody worked in the State House down in Jefferson City. And all together, they got somehow so that I could go. One of the people that my father worked for, I think it was my father. Anyhow, I got into a work program where I could go and I could work part of it because I didn't have any college money. My father was a dirt farmer, and he had 7 kids, so you can see how much money we had. But anyhow, we kept going. Everybody was so nice. Everybody who could help me helped me. One lady stayed up late at night and altered her daughter's clothes. Her daughter was older than I, and she had gone away to college, and of course she had to have new clothes. And I was so tickled to get her old clothes, and she just altered them to fit me, and off I went to college. And then later on, I came. I didn't know how to. Like I say, when I was coming to work. One day I saw this thing up here about learn to fly, but I was just at that age and feeling that I wanted everything I wanted to taste it, be, and that's how I said, oh, that might be interesting. So I called them, and I had heard the voices on the other end, a woman, but they didn't say anything to me because apparently there might have been a law that you can't keep people from going if they meet all the requirements. So I went there, and I'm telling you, they were nice to me and everything, but everybody. Well, so I decided, and there was a Mr. Green owned the airport, the place or wherever, and he had a fellow working for him or with him, Shirley, oh gosh, what is Shirley's last name? It'll come to me later on. Mm-hmm. But anyhow, he was my major teacher. And it just went off nicely because he was a very patient person. And he showed me what to do, and he didn't do a lot of hands-on work where he does it. He put me in the plane and showed me what to do. I mean, most of the time I'd be in there with him because it was 2-seater. And from then on, I just started flying. I can't think of the next.
So let me go back. You were saying you were working for the Air Force. That was the job that you had got that brought you to the D.C. area.
No, I didn't come here with the Air Force. I mean, I didn't come there. I see in the government. I work for the government, and you go from job to job. If this job pays more, you want to go to, you go to it, and maybe the first job gives out, and then you go for the other. No, I wasn't even thinking about flying when I, was working. When I got these, that was near the end of my whatever I was doing. But no, I started here with the census. I was with the Census Bureau, and what's in the radio so much about this form of government that they are after now? Who is it?
Immigration, Homeland Security, IRS.
IRS.
You work for the IRS too?
Internal Revenue, yes, I work for them too. And so, like I say, after I came here, and I'm trying to think. Well, that's just about the main parts of my air part.
Yeah.
Because the jobs I got here, it didn't deal with air, with the planes or anything. They were all office jobs.
Well, tell me more about the classes, the coursework. You told me that Mr. Green was on the second cockpit with you when you were training. What were the classes like? Were they, were you with lots of students?
No, I didn't. I don't remember Mr. Green being. Shirley, the young man, he's the one that did the teaching. And then, of course, I got a lot of pointers from Jonesy. What is his name? Herbert. And he'd help me out with things, or maybe sometimes go up in the plane with me if, nobody else was around to do it, the regular. Now, he wasn't a regular teacher, I don't think, to Jones, but was a good helper if you had questions. And so we did that until finally got to the point where it was time for me to do some solo flying. And of course, I just loved that to death. Being able to go up there and then come back down and land. I don't know. I never had an accident. I can't remember any. I go up. I did exactly what they told me to do, just how they told me to do it, and it worked. So I'm trying to think of something else.
So do you have a pilot license right now? Is that what the end?
No, I dropped it because you have to get it I think it's every year, So, and as I got older, what am I going to do with a pilot's license? And so.
But after the coursework, you got the training, and that training helped you to get the license.
Oh yes, the course, right at the end of the course, because I had what was it? I'm trying to think. There's so many little points of it that they were even, Shirley was even showing me some little tricks and things, you try a rollover, nope. I'll watch you do it, all those little tricky things. So all I did was just straight go up in the air, fly around, and land. And so, but I did a lot of it when I come here and get the plane and where I'm trying to think of this place where
she passed a long time ago.
She passed before.
Like when you were when John Green was still here, or not, or
John Green had left them, hadn't he? Yeah. John Green had left them, and she took it over. She said, "Well, they had it, so now they're gone. You got it." So we had it, and we lost it to her because of the fact that these people didn't want to do what they want to do. So, or should have done, rather. I'll put it that way.
So who took over from her was her family. Is that right? They became your
Whoever took
landlord?
over from her, no, they were not family. Well, they were families around her, but they did nothing to help her. That was the problem. And when she left, she passed. They thought that, like most people do, it's money, you know. Everything's gonna go money. That's what they think. But they were fooled. Nobody wanted to pay the tuition, and then nobody wanted to pay the Red Cross fees. Nobody wanted to pay any of the fees, and they just let it go. Maryland came along and let it sit there until 97, and I know that because I bought an Oldsmobile in 1997, see. And she just sat there and sat there and sat there, and they walked in here and took it over, Park and Planning. And that's the way it came.
Okay, but the field was no longer operating at that time, or what?
No longer operating because nobody wanted to pay the taxes on it. That's where it came in. That's where the problem came. And she was a very, very, very good lady.
So Park and Planning own it now, is that right?
Yeah, they own it now.
They own it now.
Okay.
Yeah,
So, well, while we're talking with you, can you tell me a little bit about what can you remember about John Green? Like just
John
some
Green,
little vignettes.
I can tell you a lot about John Green. John Green and I used to go horseback riding every Sunday morning, okay? After Sunday morning, we would go home, change clothes, and get in clothes to come here to go to work. So I would tell him it's time to go to work. He says, yeah, it's time for you to go to work. It's time for me to go to work. That's what he was telling me. And I came down here and I cut grass as long as you could see this field.
Mm-hmm.
And it was beautiful. It was truly beautiful. And then all of a sudden, Johnny Green decided he was going back to school and start teaching. So he went back to teaching, didn't he?
Yeah,
Yeah, he went back to teaching. And,
in this area or back in Massachusetts?
No, in Washington. In Washington, at schools there. It's where he was.
Well, can I add something to that? As Albert
Yeah.
was saying, Green was a professional educator. He taught airplane mechanics at Phelps Vocational School, and then he taught other subjects. Those are high school in Washington. And Green may have been one of the first black people in the country to receive a A&P license, which is a license which gives you the authority to work on airplanes. See, because everybody, you just can't work on airplanes because you want. You have to be licensed by the FAA. And Green also was the second black man in the country to receive a commercial pilot's license. And the commercial pilot's license simply means that you can fly for hire, you can fly for money. And so John Green made great contributions to black aviation. And one of the biggest things was that he opened this airport down here. And Columbia Air Center was the first licensed airport in the United States operated by black folks.
That's right.
Yeah.
And how did it come about?
Well, you mean, how did it come about that he was the first black to...
Now, how did it come about that the whole first airport operated by black folks, how did that, what gave rise to that?
Well,
the Navy took it over, didn't they? After
Well,
the Navy took it over after we let it go.
yeah. Are you talking about the first, when black folks began flying?
Yeah, why did you need to have your own airport? Why did you not use some of the existing airports?
Because of the racial situation that existed in this country at that time. Aviation was an elitist thing only. They thought only for the rich white folks, and black folks was out of the question. So there aviation schools, as a policy, would not teach black folks how to fly, and we're talking about back in the 30s and the 20s and during that time. And then along came World War II, and then along came guys like him, Tuskegee people, And then things began to open up because the country needed these pilots, and they said, well, you know, why not train some of these black guys? And so then then Eleanor Roosevelt and some other people came up with the idea of this flight school at Tuskegee and training these black guys to fly airplanes.
I learned to fly because I really wanted to fly, and I was this high when I saw my mother holding my hand, and I saw an airplane that was telling us that you can fly for 25 cents. Mm-hmm. In the field next door. Mm-hmm. And that's where they started this. And my mother said, oh, that's an airplane. I said, well, I'm going to fly one day. And that's where I started, right there in the field. And we were in the field down there when Johnny Green and I used to go horseback riding every Sunday morning. Lord, I hated for Sunday morning.
And there's something else, too. This airport went through a series of managers. And Albert Young was one of the managers, he and Charlie Wren and some others. And this was the only black operated airport in this area, and one of the few black operated airports in the country, really. We did have Tuskegee, and we had Harlem Airport in Chicago. But Tuskegee and Harlem Airport were not completely black operated, really. But this airport was operated by John Green and a staff of black people.
You heard me?
No, I never went.
He never went with it. No. And Johnny Green and I and somebody, was a lady, I believe, they used to go with us in the morning. And I went down there in the back of the car one day, and they told me, says, we've saddled a horse for you and your friends have gone. Don't get on the horse in the stable. They ain't going to tell me how to get on a horse. I know how to ride a horse. I went in there and got on the horse, and the horse like to beat my brains out against the ceiling. Yeah. So that went for a while, you know. Yeah, well, you didn't believe that horse would kill you, did you? I say, no, I didn't believe it, but he tried. So it went very well. And then Johnny Green and I went home. I had a headache, but, you know, I had to go ride that tractor.
You know, something else that you all may be interested in, during the whole year, during the whole time that we had the operation down here, we never had a fatality.
That's right.
We had a few accidents, but never a fatality. And that is something that we contribute to John Green, because John Green insisted that people do things according to do things safely. Yeah. And so we did have several accidents, but we never had anybody to be killed down here. And that's over a period of about 15 years, really, of flying on a daily basis.
And you remember some of the aircraft that you used to fly in?
Oh yeah, we had the Piper Cubs, we had the Aronkas, we had the Taylorcraft, Stearman, the BT-13s, and one fellow down here had an AT-6, which was a surplus airplane, and we also had a Stetson down here. Also, the Stetson was that was a four-place airplane with a radial engine in it, and it had a radial engine, and it was a very popular airplane at that time. Yeah. Tell you who used to own one. You all will never remember this name, but Wallace Berry. Remember Wallace Berry? Yeah. Yeah, he owned a Stetson, a Goldwing Stetson, and we had a Goldwing Stetson down here also. Albert remembers that.
Yeah, and it was a good airplane. Loved it to death. But we didn't really pass this up. We tried to take care of it as long as we could, and the money that we were making and what we could do to keep it. And we didn't have too much after Johnny Green left, because he went back to school, and that's where he stayed in school, and we had to go at it on our own, and we did everything we could to keep it up. And like motorcycle riders, we had them. We had there dances and parties and whatnot, to get money to operate this. But I don't remember how the Navy got into this.
Well, the Navy took it over during World War II. Yeah, and then after the war was over, they turned it back to civilian use. Yeah. Yeah.
That was the way it was.
Yeah.
Herbert used to tell me that I met this lady, and you know who she is, and I didn't know who she really was until today. And I'm glad of that, believe me. Yeah.
Yeah, Gladys is one of the early female pilots around here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Gladys used to fly Green Zaranka, and I remember she took a number of cross-country flights also, right? You took a lot of cross-country flights in Green's airplane.
My memory is real.
You don't remember that, Gladys? You told me about it. Yeah, I know you did.
Well, I went down to Orange. Wasn't it Orange, Virginia?
Yeah.
Orange, Virginia.
Yeah. Yeah.
They still operate.
Yeah, Gladys, she was one of the first female pilots of color in this area. Because she used to come down here, and when she came down here, all the fellas came down here also.
I have to tell you this one about me.
She was our Willa Brown.
That's right. That's right.
I decided that I was going to solo one day. Johnny Green and I had gone through our routine. We went through the horseback riding. We went home, got dressed, and came down here. And Johnny Green says, well, I think that I'm going to let you go. I said, what you mean you're going to let me go? Well, I think you're ready to fly. So he said, you're going today. So I'm going to take you up, and if you do 2 good processes, and I'll let you go. We came back. Johnny Green stopped on the field somewhere back in there, and he said, well, do you think you can hold it, or can you make it, or whatever you can do by yourself? It's gonna go when I get out of it, because it's all light and then heavy, and with me in there. And he went on talking and running off at the mouth. That aircraft was sitting there running. Okay, he said, well, okay, now you be good. And I'm going to get out. And he got out of it, and he closed the door. Well, he buckled the seat, and then he closed the door. And I went down the runway, and when I moved the throttle forward, and darn, I can't even think of it now. But anyway, when I raised the tail of the aircraft, it was gone. Now the wind was blowing, and Johnny Green didn't have any business letting me go, because non-commercial pilots could use a 15 mile per hour in the wind. That's what it was. They had to have less. If it was more than 15 feet, you couldn't use it. Round this field I went. My good friend and his good friends, they were all standing there looking at me go around the field. Now, they didn't know that I couldn't get an airplane on the ground. So, what did I do? I started from that end of the field to go across here to this end of the field. Started from that end of the field, go to this end of the field. Go to this end, go to that end of the field. Go to this end, go to that end of the field. I just couldn't get that airplane on the ground. As soon as I got it close to the ground, I said, now this don't make any sense. I have to get this thing down here somewhere. So I'm going to go towards the barn. Because I figure if I hit that barn,
Are you okay?
I'll be okay. So I come back in there. I said, no, it won't go this way. I'm going around this way. So I came in over the field back here somewhere. And when I started in there, I said, oh, it's going good, going good. Sure enough, it went right onto the ground. I guess it was gas free. So I ain't got no gas, I'm going to get out.
Get this turkey down.
Yeah, so it was good. And everything here has really been just outstanding, really and truthfully. We loved it.
Cassie had a question.
Well, we were reading about how the Navy, they found out they were interested in the Air Force. I was just wanting to find out more about how that business arrangement, if I may, you know, what happened when they came to ask you if they could lease?
Well, the Navy is the Navy. They don't ask you anything. They tell you what they're going to do. But I really don't know how that... Do you know how that came about?
Well, the Navy took over this field during World War II, and at that time, all civilian flying within the on the East Coast was stopped. So you couldn't fly civilian airplanes along the East Coast here. And then the Navy had a base down here at what's the Navy base down here? Down the river here, Patuxent. They had a base down in Patuxent. And so what they did, they were doing a lot of training down there, and they used to use this field here as an auxiliary landing strip for in conjunction with the training that they were doing down there. And the Navy, and if you look, there's a pier down there at the end of this runway, end of the field there, and the Navy built that pier down there. So anyhow, the Navy took this place over, and after the war was over, they let John Green and them know about it, and then reverted back to civilian use.
Okay, but when the Navy saw the property that you guys the Cloud Club had done a lot of work, right? You had already built those runways and stuff.
Well, you say built. The only thing we did was to cut runways out on the grass, really. In other words, these were all sod runways. They're not hard surface runways. And you just needed to have a good grass cutter to cut the runways out and make sure they were smooth enough so that airplanes could land on them. They're not like the modern day airports where you have all the concrete and that sort of thing. Yeah.
But you did have, Cassie, back off just a little bit. You did have a hangar, and you did have a lot of labor hours in cutting those runways.
Yeah, we had.
And you had an apron where the gas pumps were. I mean, you put some money into this.
Yeah, they had two hangars here. They had a small hangar down here and a larger hangar further up there. And Green had a partner, Dr. Corey Gill, who was the guy who did a lot of the financing, because it did take money to maintain this place, to buy airplanes, to maintain airplanes, and that sort of thing. So Dr. Gill was the money guy, and he helped John Green keep the place going.
Was he also a pilot?
Yeah, Gill was a pilot. Yeah, he was a physician at the old house at used to be Freedman's Hospital. Yeah, and he owned the Beechcraft Bonanza, and he
that airplane, if I'm not mistaken, it's not running. It's sitting on the field down at High.
What? Green? His airplane?
The one that Gill had.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe
no. It was. That's what it was. And the one that Herbert, not Herbert. What's the boy's name that had them? Darn, I forget what he is. But his airplane is down there also, sitting on the field.
So did he pass?
Dr. Gill died. Yeah. Now he was, like I said before, he was Green's financial partner on this airport. And he owned several airplanes, really. He owned a Stetson, and he owned a Beechcraft Bonanza, and a Fairchild also. So he was instrumental in the aviation community, even though his main income was from being a physician at Howard University Hospital. Yeah.
Now, did he have family? You have kids?
I think he does. I don't know. I don't know. No,
Gill.
Dr. Gill.
Gill had kids.
Are they still around? You seen any of them?
I didn't know them, but he was one of my wife's doctors. He was one of my wife's sister-in-law, a doctor, And the one that was the sister to my wife used to call Gil at night, 1, 2 o'clock, and tell him she had a pain in her stomach. I need this and I need that, and he'd get up like a fool and go. Now he was something else, I'm telling you. But he was really good. He was really a good doctor, though, and he had a lot of people in the way. Yeah.
Gil was hurt pretty bad, and so they had to. Somebody came up here, broke in the door of the office, called the ambulance down here, and Gil stayed in the hospital for about a month or so. Yeah.
Do you remember what kind of aircraft it was?
Yeah, it was a Globe Swift. A Globe Swift, yeah.
And that Globe Swift, the last time I saw it, it was sitting on the field at Clyde.
Oh, okay.
Over there where the...
But he didn't give up flying after that, or what?
Who's that, Gil?
Gil?
Oh no, Gil bought several airplanes. He bought a Stenson Voyager, and then he bought the last airplane he owned was a V-tail Bonanza.
Oh.
Yeah. And he had a home over here at Columbia Beach, and there's a landing strip close to his home over there. And he used to fly over there on weekends and land at the strip there. Yeah.
Butler was the name of the guy that I was trying to think of.
Who's that?
Butler. You remember Butler had an airplane?
Oh, Arthur Butler?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Who was he?
Butler worked for a company out in Virginia, and he was doing different things. He would clean here, or he was just an all around the world person. That he would do anything that would make him some money, and that's the way he was. And something happened to a truck out there, and that truck backed into him, as I understand from one of the people that worked there, that it backed him into another truck, and that's what killed him. And he wasn't there for long.
Was he a pilot also?
Yeah, he was a pilot. Mm-hmm.
At Beacon? I mean at Columbia?
At Hyde.
Oh, at Highfield.
Highfield, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so I think some of you started out flying at Beacon. Is that right?
Beacon, I flew around the country out here. It could have been me. On even as far as a windy day down in Virginia, and he said the guy in the office was telling me how beautiful he were flying, what he does this and how he do this, and he will sit there with his feet up and all of that crap. So I said, yeah, I'm going to break that up today. So that day I got the airplane, and it was a, I forget what it was now, but anyway, he said, oh, well, we can down the road runway, we do this, and I do this, and I do this, telling me how intelligent he was and whatnot. I said, is that right? Oh, really? Yeah, So I went down there, zoom, up in there, and he says, what are you doing? I says, I'm flying the airplane. And he says, yeah, but I mean, you doing it too fast. It's too windy out there. I said, oh, it is? It's not bothering me in here. I took my hands off of the wheel, and he, like I had a fit, and the guy in the office had told me how frightful he was and what he could do and how intelligent he was. And when he got through, he was looking like his red shirt here. So that's the way that went. And I never went down there after that because I don't think they were going to let me fly there anyway. So that's the way it went there.
Well, black pilots had a difficult time in this area prior to World War II. At most of the airports around here, you were not welcome. They didn't want to rent you airplanes and didn't want to teach you to fly at these airports.
Sorry, I missed the first part of that. Can you tell me that again?
What did I say?
You were saying that you weren't that welcome.
Oh, yeah. In this area, prior to World War II, black people were not welcome at most of these airports because flying then was an elitist thing, which was only for the well-to-do white people, and this is something that they didn't want blacks supposed to be involved in, and and then John Green came, and then there's a man here by the name of John R. Pinkett, who was a real estate guy, and he and some other fellas founded this field down here, and they eventually called it Columbia Air Center. And when they found, and what happened, they opened this place up as an airport. They built 2 hangars on this field, and they built several runways, and that's how Columbia Air Center really really started. But during that time, to see a black person on any of these airports was an unusual thing, and what you never saw really, because like I said before, aviation was an elitist thing. Even for poor white people, it was an elitist thing. But black folks were not supposed to be involved in flying. And so John Green came down here from Boston. He and a man by the name of John R. Pinkett, John Pinkett ended up by being a flight instructor at Tuskegee during World War II, and some other folks, and they got together and got Columbia Air Center started. Now, Columbia Air Center goes back many years, really. See, what you see here now is just what used to be, really. But this was one of the biggest airports around here at that time. And it was the only place that black folks were welcome as far as those people who wanted to learn to fly. And if you went to some of these other airports, the first thing that they asked you, what you want or who you looking for, you know. And so Columbia Air Center was the only place that they could fly.
So if you went to Beacon Field or one of the others and said, I want to fly, what would the reaction be?
They'd say, we don't teach black folks to fly here.
Just like that?
Yeah. They didn't hold back. They just tell you they didn't do it. See? And of course, you just can't put the blame on aviation. This was the way our society was, period, at that time. See,
yeah.
And aviation was, as I said, was an elitist thing for the so-called well-to-do white folks, and for black folks to get into it was something, you know, that they didn't really want.
Now, did you experience any of something like that yourself?
Oh,
of course.
Yeah, I tell you one. You know, we had a Stetson, which is a big 5-place airplane, and we were coming back from West Virginia, and we were low on fuel, so we decided to land at an airport called Bayless Crossroads, which no longer exists today. Mm-hmm. So we landed at Bayless Crossroads, and it had been raining, and the field was kind of wet. And the airport manager came out there raising canes, telling us to get off of the airport, because not simply because the airport was wet, it was because we were black folks, and they were not used to seeing black people flying airplanes. See, and but you know, things soon changed because they began to realize that this black dollar spent as well as the white dollar. So they began to change because they knew that there was money involved, see. So those are the way things used to be. Things have really changed now, because if you look around, you have a lot of black people who are flight instructors at these various airports, and people who are co-managers some of these so-called all white airports, see. And then one of the biggest things that happened was with the Tuskegee Airmen. They opened the door for a lot of opportunities for black people, because the idea was that black people black people were inherently incapable of flying airplanes. That was the general philosophy, but I always said that was a bunch of nonsense, really. See. Because to fly an airplane, just to fly an airplane is no big deal, really, you know. And you can teach anybody to fly an airplane. But then there are the related subjects of navigation, all that sort of thing that goes with it, see. But things have changed.
So that was a good incident that you told me about Bailey's Crossroads.
Oh.
Now, did you just comply and leave, or did you say
Well,
you need gas? Or
well, I couldn't buy gas there, so I had to take off and go somewhere else.
You couldn't buy gas because they wouldn't sell it to you, or because they didn't have any, or?
Well, the excuse they wanted, oh, he's got the picture of the airplane. Show it to him. That's the Galway airplane.
Oh, wow, yeah.
5 passengers.
Yeah.
So you were telling me that you wanted to buy gas.
Yeah, they wouldn't sell me gas there because they were mad because they said I shouldn't have landed there because the field was wet. And you see, at that time, most of the general aviation airports were sod runways. Were sod runways. So they were kind of angry about my landing there.
But you didn't do any damage.
No, I didn't do any damage, but the idea was that they said, well, you knew the airport was wet, and by your landing you caused ruts to come in the runway. So we had to take off from Bailey's Crossroads and go over to Beacon Field. Now Beacon had hard service runways, really.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You
I
okay,
had
Albert?
I had almost the same thing down on Route 29. You remember the airport there used to be on the left side, on the right side when you were coming this way?
On 29?
On 29, yeah. And I went in there one day and asked him, he wanted to know what was I doing there. I said, what do you think I'm doing here? I got an airplane. Well, I've always had a fresh mouth anyway, so it didn't make much difference to me, you know. So
I missed the first part of that. Which place was that?
it was on Route 29 northbound. It was the airport there. And I went in there.
The name of it?
No, I don't.
Okay.
To tell you the truth. And I went in there that day and they hit the ceiling. Man, what are you doing here? What does it look like I'm doing here? You know.
Don't you know your place?
Yeah, that's something like that. So I went in there and that guy says, oh, don't pay him any mind, don't pay him any mind. Well, he was broke. And he said, but you have to pay me a little something. I paid him. I forgot what the fee was. Went around, he says, you do a couple of things and we'll go back in there and I'm going to sit there with my hand raised. And he did, just like that. And I landed the thing and right then he got out of it, never said anything. Other than to say, thank you for my payment. And he stayed there and I left and bam, he was gone. That's where he was. So, I mean, I know what Herbert is talking about when he said you can't get water, you can't get this, and you can't get gas. I went into Baltimore. This guy was queer. He was. And he told me, I said, I'm here to do a little run. He said, well, you ain't going to run here. I said, well, we'll see who's going to run here. Well, I can tell anybody to run that I want to run. I'm glad you're in the mood to run because you might have to do that, you know. And I always had a fresh mouth, you know. So when the guy who really owned the field came out and said, what's going on? He said, oh, nothing. He wants to run. I said, I don't want to run. I'm not going to run. He's the one that's telling me that who can do what and who can't do this. So I went in there and he said, well, sit down for a minute and get yourself cool, because I don't play that. He said, I need the money. He don't have the money. You got the money to pay me. We're going to put you in wherever you want to go. He's going out of here, and I'm going back to my office. And that's the way it went. But there were a lot of them out there was like that. Just, you know.
Now that was Baltimore? Which part of Baltimore?
Baltimore, they use the north runway now, run 5. I think that runway is 5,000 feet.
What is Baltimore International right now?
Baltimore International right now,
okay.
yeah. So that's the runway.
You might want to talk to Billy here. Billy has a lot of experience
Yeah.
as far as military aviation is concerned. And Billy was almost commissioned as an Air Force officer. And flew the AT-6s and the BTs and the Stearmans, right?
Yeah, I didn't fly the BT.
Oh, you didn't fly
No,
the BT?
my class was one of the first to fly AT-6 in basic.
Okay.
But I started out liking flying, looking at the Stencil line.
Mm-hmm.
I was 12 years old down on the mall on my bicycle, watching the Stencil line take off with passengers, and they'd ride them around and bring them back. And since they couldn't have a handle but 4 or 5, they'd pick up and bring them back frequently. And what I did was just sit there and watch them, and then I'd take my 10 cents and go to the model place and buy a stencil line and built it, yeah, as a little boy. But that was my first wanting to fly. And then I went to work.
Did you have any mentors, uncles?
Nobody.
Parents?
No, we couldn't spell flying. You know, when I got in high school, I met a Charlie Baltimore.
Oh, yeah.
Charlie Baltimore was my drafting teacher. And he was a person that talked about flying. And I quit high school and went to work with this guy, with Herb. Herb and I went to work at the patent office. And that's when I heard he's the first black person I met who had anything to do with flying. And he had in his backyard a BT-13. I thought that was the most amazing thing that could happen to a young boy. I was 16 when I went to work. But that's when I got my interest. When I turned 17 and realized I was going to go into service, I talked to my mother. I said, "Ma, I don't want to go in the Navy. I want to go in the Army Air Corps to fly." Well, I hadn't finished high school. I'm working in the government. And I'm sure my mother said, "Well, that big dummy, he's talking about going in the Air Corps. He can't pass the test. So we'll let him take the test and fail." Well, I fooled her, and I did pass the test. And on February the 1st, 1944, I was sworn in the Army Air Corps Reserves. I wasn't old enough to go into the service. May of 1944, I went into service. Went to Keister Field for basic training in the Army and to take some additional tests. I took the additional test and passed the test and was sent up to Tuskegee Army Airfield. We went to Cheehaw. The amazing thing about this, though, was I took the test next to a gentleman who had graduated from MIT in 1944, old Gomez. And Gomez blew the test away. Yeah, I know. I did too, because I did the first problem. And then I quit. I started writing my mother a letter because I figured they were going to send me someplace other than Tuskegee. But the monitor came by and said, "Mister, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm finished the test. I'm writing my mother." Well, I guess he figured, boy, that guy's smart. He finished the test already. Well, I did what I knew, which was the smartest thing I did down there. I passed the test, and they sent me up to the Tuskegee Army Airfield for single-engine pilot training. I didn't get into training until May of 1945. And Gomez and I went into training together. Gomez washed out in primary, and they kept him as a teacher because he was smart, but he couldn't fly. But as Herb said earlier, anybody can fly. In the military, you got to fly the way they want you to fly in the time they want you to fly. I soloed after only 8 hours of instruction, and I was the first in my class to solo. And I felt pretty good about that because I was the little guy. The baby soldier was my nickname. And I was the little guy that they would tease because I was so small. And I was able to take the first 20-hour check. And I took it with C. Alfred Anderson, Chief Anderson. Now, Chief Anderson went through what Herb and them went through. nobody would teach him to fly. So he got his members of his family to donate money to him. He bought an airplane and rode it up and down a field until he felt good about it and took it off. And he tested and taught everybody to fly that was a Tuskegee Airman, from General Davis to me. And my class, at the end of the war, we were still in training. And of course we feel that the war ended because we were in training. They heard we were coming and quit. But that's of course not true. But my class, out of my class, the guys that stayed, because we were all declared surplus. I was discharged as an aviation cadet. And the guys that stayed, only 8 of the guys, and we started out with 100. 50 of us graduated from primary. I don't remember how many of us graduated from basic, but 2 of my classmates were killed in twin engine accident the day I left from Tuskegee.
Now, for primary, what kind of aircraft were you flying?
PT-13D. That's a single engine, open cockpit, radial engine, about 220 horsepower, something like that. And that's what we learned in. That's what we were taught in. And my instructor did exactly the same thing he did. Got out of the airplane at the T after one of the worst rides I thought I'd given him. Got out the airplane at the T and said, "Go on up and kill yourself." And I went out and soloed. I soloed very strangely because I came around the first time and I bounced all the way down the runway before I decided I'd go up and come around again. And I finally made my 3 landings. And the next day I made 3 more landings by myself. The next day I made 3. So after the 9 landings, they let you go out of the pattern, traffic pattern, and out into an assigned area. And you're supposed to go out and practice your turns to the left, turns to the right, stall, and do all those things. I went out joyriding.
Nobody went with you, did they?
I went out joyriding. I thought that was the best thing ever happened to me that first day out there. I went down to Union Springs.
Yeah, I remember
You went down to Union Springs, and I just did everything that I could with that little. I even chased some buzzards out the sky. It was a big thrill for me, but I give all the credit to the guys who taught me. Cecil Ryan and Leonard Jackson. Cecil Ryan taught me to fly. Jack taught me to fly the AT-6, and he had come back from overseas, and he had shot down 3 German planes in 2 days. And he taught me. He taught me well. I think, very frankly, after basic, they could have put me in a P-40, and I could have gone into combat, just on the basis of what he had taught me. We did dog fighting and formation flying and all of that in basic, and I shot him down doing some dog fighting because I had some tips from some guys that come back that knew me. Said, don't put your nose on his tail, put it on his canopy, and you can't lose him. And he did a couple of things, and he always had 2 students, Frank Jones and myself. And Jones was in the 3rd spot on this one, and I'm in the 2nd spot. And he did a couple of rolls and everything, and I'm still sitting. When he came out of the 3rd, when I picked up the mic, I got you. Well, if it was anything I did dumb, that was it. Because when I got back to the ready room, I walked in with my 5 pillars and my parachute, and all of the instructors were waiting for me. Because everybody in the air heard that. And they reamed me out for about 40 minutes. And then they turned me loose, and Captain Jackson came to me and said, I gave you an A on the ride, mister. So he was satisfied. He just said, like my cockiness, like you shooting off at the mouth. And
so, can you remember what it felt like when you actually soloed? I mean, was it in your gut, in your heart? Where was it, and how did it feel?
It's hard to explain, except that I wanted when I went out of the traffic pattern, those 9 landings I made that was work. That was work. But when I went out of the traffic pattern, the first thing I thought, if my mother could see me now, if little mama could see me now. And the other thing, I thought, I know God must have had something to do with this, because I just was not smart enough, I thought, to be able to fly an airplane.
So now, obviously, your mother did get to hear about it.
Oh yeah.
And so, what do you remember about your mother's thoughts about you having made it?
Well, one thing she wrote me a letter, said, remember, they can buy more airplanes. And that was...
No, they couldn't buy you.
They couldn't buy more me's. They can buy more airplanes. So if anything happened to the airplane, get the heck out. Because we had to fly with parachutes. And I knew... In fact, the first time I missed, we were flying formation, and I missed the signal to switch gas tanks. And we... That's me. And the first thing I did was unhook my seatbelt. I said, because Mama said they can buy more airplanes. And then I switched gas tanks and caught up and came to them. And those things you do, and I tell everybody, when you're taught to fly an airplane and the teacher does it the right way, you do things on instinct. You don't have to think about it. You don't think about what should I do if this happens. You do it. And that's the second thing I did was what I was supposed to do, switch gas tanks, and it worked.
Now, getting back to the story about whether black people were meant to fly airplanes and blah blah, and you know what the white folks used to think and say and whatever. Did you have any personal experiences?
No, because I was in the military. In the military, you don't, they like I had one classmate who was from out in I think it was from Idaho or somewhere out there. He said, I didn't know I was a Negro till I got here.
I could tell you something like that.
Yeah,
You would never
because
remember.
we were packed together and we did everything together. Where I fell short in classroom, they came to me and helped me. And if I could help them with flying, for example, one of my classmates from Chicago, Tom McGarity, who stayed and graduated, was Ray Charles' pilot. He got in some trouble because he crashed the Black Muslims airplane. He landed with the wheels up, and he went into hiding. Now I can tell the story on Tom because he's dead now, but that was the guys were just top notch, and I know it wasn't. I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I watched Herb. We as we worked, like I said, we worked at the patent office together, and he'd talk about his flying and stuff. Man, I used to just look at him in awe, because his daddy and my daddy worked there, and we became very close friends. Turns out my wife was the very best friend of his brother's wife, and so we've known each other for 100 years, and I still look up to him. I kid him a lot, but I look up to him because he's the guy that made me want to fly. Now, he brought me down here and put me in a Piper Cub without a parachute, and I took that sucker off, and he had to help me because I was used to and easing back on the stick, and Herb said no, and we got up in there and I started climbing, and Herb said, where you going? I said, I'm going up, I want to do some acrobatics. And he said, you don't have that much time. So I did a couple of crazy eights, rolling, and then we landed. And I told Herb, I said, Herb, if that's what I got to fly, this Piper Cub was a kite with a Volkswagen engine on it. And I didn't. So he tried to convince me to get into CAP. And that's the one mistake I've made in my life. I should have taken his advice, because I could have flown other airplanes. And I'm noticing now, because of my association with the Tuskegee Airmen, that we have kids that are learning to fly because of the CAP. And it's a mistake I made, but I think that was balanced by, because I didn't do that, I went to Howard University, met my wife, who we were married 61 years, 11 months, and 15 days when she passed. And that was a key moment in my life. When I graduated from Howard with a degree in civil engineering, I went to work with the Metro, with the National Capital Transportation Agency, I was the first black engineer hired by him. Now, that's when I started to see the problems that you had, when I'd walk in offices and they want to know where the person representing Metro was, and I'd say, me, and their jaws would drop down. But after they found out, in fact, my general manager, Jackson Graham, would let them know, if you want to know anything about Metro and District of Columbia, that's the man you want to talk to. So I can understand what they went through. I didn't have to do that because I didn't fly after I came out. I didn't go through it. I knew John Pinkett. John was an instructor down at in primary when we were down there. In fact, we had some outstanding. J.O. Plinton was the first man I ever went up in an airplane with. He ended up owning an airline in South America at the end of the war, when the war ended, and Eastern Airlines bought it from him and made him a vice president of Eastern Airlines, first black man to do that. So I've touched these guys, and I have to thank Herb for wanting me to continue to fly. But like I said, he was the first person I ever saw, black person I ever saw, that knew anything about flying an airplane. And I tried to mimic him, because I'm a baby in this bunch. See, I'm in '87, and I'm a baby in this bunch. Those guys, they were flying when I was riding my bicycle.
He's a very modest guy. He's very modest. He's done a whole lot of things. I've done a lot of things.
I could tell you a story that would make
you our lunch
grow.
But what inspired you? Can you think back to when you were a teenager or something? Where did this all start?
Well, my mother used to insist that we go to Sunday school, and we had an airport not far from where we lived. And back there, you didn't have air conditioning, so they used to put all the windows up, And so I used to sit in Sunday school, looking out the window and watching these Piper Cubs and rockers and things fly over the church. And then after the church service was over, we used to take our bicycles and fly and go up to what was then known as the Capitol Airport, which was up on Kelsworth Avenue. And we used to go up there and sit up there and watch the airplanes fly. And I remember we asked the guy how much it cost to learn to fly. The guy told us, more money than you got. And then I began to build model airplanes.
Yeah.
And during that time, I was, going to junior high school, then to high school, and then the CPT program came along, which was a program for people in college.
Mm-hmm.
And the instructor that was doing the CPT program for Howard University was C. Alfred Anderson. And he was operating out of a place called Hydra Valley, Virginia. And so I heard about that, and my dad took me down there to Hydra Valley to meet Anderson. And so I got my first ride in a Piper Cub. And at that time, the Piper Cub had only 40 horsepower. And 40 horsepower isn't very much, And so we were taking off, and I looked at the engine temperature gauge, and the engine temperature gauge is 140 degrees. I told my daddy the airplane was going 140 miles an hour, which in reality it wasn't going much over 60 miles an hour. And that was my first flight, and the first time I ever had the opportunity to handle the controls of an airplane. And then it went on from there. Yeah.
That's great. All right, we're going to pause for...
Hi. So thanks for the chat earlier, but we hear that there was some kind of trip that you all took to Atlantic City, you and Mr. Jones.
Where's Mr. Jones?
Here I am.
Do you mind if I tell him? There's nothing wrong about it.
No, sure, tell him, yeah.
Yeah, we went up in the BT. You know, I love that old plane. Of course, I couldn't pilot it, but
You
I don't know.
have if you wanted to. Yeah.
But anyhow, I asked him, you know, did he feel like it? Yeah. And so we flew up there. And we went right over where I used to love to go, is the waterfront. You know what they call it, the Atlantic City
Strip.
Well, yeah, it's right out in right over boardwalk. And we flew over the boardwalk, and I swear he got real close, and he swears he didn't. But anyhow, we went over it and had a good time, and then all at once a storm came up, because we were just going to fly up and fly back home. Storm came up, so we're trying to decide what to do. And I said, there's nothing to do. We're going to have to find a place to stay. And he agreed. We agreed. So we went to this little place, and they happened to have 2 empty rooms. And so we just stayed that night, and next morning we left. So it was quite enjoyable.
So you said Mr. Jones was piloting, is that right?
Yeah, he was piloting with those big planes, you know. That I had some pictures at home of me like I was driving it. I couldn't even empty the anything. I couldn't do anything to it, but it was a beautiful ride, you know.
You could fly.
Oh no, I couldn't do that. I couldn't handle that. But I really enjoyed that ride.
Well, you know, Gladys, that night we were getting ready to take off, and I think the Lord must have said, let me give this guy some brains here. You know? The clouds are low as I don't know what. It was nighttime.
And it didn't rain and storming and everything. And it just came up all of a sudden.
So we were supposed to head back to Washington. This is nighttime. Got out there on the runway, got the landing lights turned on and everything. And the Lord says, don't you be no fool. That's right.
So let's get this straight. So you all were just going to fly over and fly back. You all weren't going to land. The plan was not to land, or did you all land?
No, we weren't at the airport, No, we were just going up there to make a, ride. Yeah. And that's all we wanted to do, just go up there and fly over the thing and come back. And so when things were going on, we both asked, what should we do? I mean, this looks bad. I said, I'll be honest, I don't want to go no place with that storm coming up like that. And he agreed, we were both, and it was just, very nice, very nice.
You see, Gladys is talking about the other folks, and Gladys is probably a little pilot herself. Yeah, she used to fly cross country quite a bit. She flew right out of this airport right here. And she used to fly a John Green Taranka, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And she was one of the few black women in this area that flew. I only knew one other person, which was a woman by the name of Fleischer Pinkett. But she was the only woman I knew that flew besides Gladys. And Gladys would come down here, jump in that airplane, and go. Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it.
Yeah.
When she first came, and she saw that she was a girl, what was the reaction?
You know what the reaction was? all the guys saw it coming down here.
The boys like that. I don't think Mr. Green was happy about it when I first signed up, because he didn't. I just don't think he knew what he had to do, because I don't know what was in the law that he could restrict it from anybody anyhow. And Shirley, he was very, he wanted me to go ahead and do it because
he was one of the instructors down here, Shirley King.
And I wanted to do it. Of course, when I was coming up, I had 4 brothers. And of course, I could do anything that my brothers could do. I thought, they hadn't flown a plane yet, but they could do other things that I'd check with them with, show them that I could do the same thing. But this, I just really wanted to do it. I mean, and I didn't come to fly a plane. I was just on the streetcar, and I saw the thing saying there. And then, of course, I wanted to do it.
Can you tell Cassie any other memories you have of Mr. Jones, flying with Mr. Jones, or anything funny, or any narrow escapes, or anything that you can remember?
No, I'll probably remember them after I get home. That's what happened. No, I had, now, for example, when I was working on my, what is it when you get your certificate?
Your private pilot's license?
Yeah, private pilot's license. See, I had to go to this little place in Virginia. I can't think of the name to save my life. You remember?
Yeah, what was the name of that place? Yeah, I know.
Orange? Was it Orange?
Well, Orange was one of the places where we used to go. Yeah.
And but you had to stop at this place, Springfield, I think.
Springfield, that's right. Yeah.
You had to stop and land, and then they have to come in and sign my log, and you take off again, and then you go on down to Orange, and of course they sign down there, and you can go on back home. You only had to land one time. But when you get ready to come back, you don't have to land again. You come straight on from Orange to... And of course, my plane didn't have any lights, and this fellow who argued with me about signing it, the first landing, had taken up so much of my time to me trying to persuade him. I said, you don't have to say I'm a good pilot or anything. Just say I landed and I took off. That's all you're responsible for. So finally I got him to do that. And then like I say, when I got down to Orange, I took off, but I didn't have to land the second time down there. I just take off from and come on straight back. Of course, my plane didn't have any lights. When I got back to the airport, there was one little weak light up there, and that's what I had to do, but I did it.
Wow, that's excellent. That's really great.
Yeah.
I was reading that you all had like an exhibition here, like the opening day, and you had like people come, like the community. Was it like a flying like exhibition that was back in August, like 1941? I was reading about that. Like people came here to watch you all. Like,
well, we had several air shows down here.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Tell me about the air shows.
Well,
they had acrobatic flying, and they had airplane rides for people. And the biggest thing was the fact that folks came down here and found out that we were here. In other words, the Columbia Air Center was not as well known as the other airports at that time. But when we had the air show, then we became known to a lot of people, and the black community took an interest in what we were doing down here. And you know, I have to say black community because back there, which is before your time, way before your time, there was a big difference, you know.
Amen.
So from a social standpoint, there's a big difference. So,
So tell me more about that. What was the difference?
oh, you don't know, huh?
She is so
Well, the-
young. She is.
Well,
This
yeah. Well, you know, we had two different societies. We had the black society, and then we had the all white society, which we were not supposed to be part of. See, and the theaters and the eating places here in Washington D.C. all were segregated, and that applied to airports also. In reality, as far as the airports were concerned, the only airport that blacks were welcome at was this airport here. Now, there are a few other airports where they would occasionally let some black people fly there, but that was not a normal thing. So racism was well and good in the aviation community as in other areas of our life. And well, if you look at it, you look at the airlines. The first black airline pilot was not hired until 1960 something. Yeah. And the military was ahead of the airlines because the military, of course, we had the P-32nd and the military pilots, but the bombardment group, yeah. But as far as the civilian aviation is concerned, it was highly segregated. The black, like I was saying, the first black pilot to fly for a scheduled airline was a guy by the name of Marlon Green, who flew cargo for an airline out in the Midwest. He was the first black guy to fly a scheduled airline. Yeah.
So you said when you had the air shows, that kind of helped introduce the field to more African Americans.
Oh yeah. Well, you know, air shows always draw a big crowd because people come to the air shows to see people crash. And
Bessie Coleman.
yeah. Okay. Yeah. Bessie. Yeah. He brings a good point. Bessie Coleman. Now she was one of the first black people licensed to fly. She was licensed in France, I believe it was. Yeah. And she, huh?
She was an acrobatic flyer.
That's right. Yeah. And she was killed during an air show where she fell out of the airplane. And she was quite a pilot. And there's several books that have been written about Bessie Coleman. Yeah. And
Did you ever meet her?
no, I've never met Bessie Coleman. No. The only guy.
We were too young.
Yeah.
Too young for
Yeah, Bessie died in
I don't know where
the
she
year I was
went
born, I
to
think.
that goddamn house up over all her from.
What's that?
I'm just calling myself.
Bessie died in the 20s.
She did? Oh yeah.
I don't know. What can we ask?
Oh.
I met her, some of her relatives out at Andrews.
Oh, you did? Yeah.
What?
Oh. Mm.
One of the guys I read a book about.
Mm-hmm.
I was
Asking about some of the
the Black Eagle out of New York.
Oh, you talking about Hubert Julian? Yeah.
I found out he was from Turkey.
Well, you know, I wonder about that. I think he was the kind of guy who was, how can I put it?
Flamboyant?
Yeah, he was a flamboyant guy,
Yeah.
but he made people aware, really, that that black folks were involved in aviation.
He was the Italian's Air Force.
Yeah.
I mean, he was the Ethiopian
Yeah.
Air Force.
Yeah.
when the Italians
Yeah.
attacked.
Yeah. And I kind of think he got a bad rep over the years. I don't know.
He crashed so many there.
Well, you know, that could be said about a lot of pilots. Yeah.
Mr. Johns,
Yeah.
Cassie has another question.
Oh, sorry. We'd already heard one of your students really became very successful, this man here.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me more about the other students that trained here, you know, and what they did, you know, after, you know, how they took the career, you know, forward, you know.
Well, we had one lady who learned to fly not here, but I taught her to fly at Potomac Airport, and she became an airline pilot. And for the life of me, I can't remember her name, but Albert, you wouldn't know her either. But anyhow,
people that go there and start here and became very successful.
Anyhow, her name was Mac Barrows. That was her last name, and she still flies. She's now a corporate pilot, and I taught her to fly over at Potomac Airport. And then, you know, when I think about the people that I've been involved with as far as flying is concerned,
I don't know.
you know, at my age, sometimes my mind calls blacks out. Yeah.
Right. And I imagine other people were successful in aviation as well as other fields. You know, if anybody, you had more. I'm sure you had a lot of people that went on to be, you know, commercial flyers as well as recreational flyers. Any other, you know, recollections of people who?
There are some people. I can't really think of any names off the bat right now.
But anybody have a career in the FAA or anything like that got some kind of a start here?
Yeah, there's a fellow named Melvin Cooper. Mel Cooper was an official with the Federal Aviation Agency. Mm-hmm. And he learned, and I taught him to fly right here at Columbia Airtime. His name is Melvin Cooper.
I was in the Civil Air Patrol. I was a warrant officer for a while, and that's about it.
And what was your role? What were you doing as a warrant officer for that?
You know, I can't even remember too much about it.
Well, we can talk to you about it later.
Well,
Sure.
I'll tell you about the Civil Air Patrol. It's an organization which did a lot of aerial searches. You know, a lot of times people fly airplanes and they fly in certain areas. If something happens there, it's hard to locate them. And this is what CAP did. They used to be the search arm for the Air Force. Whenever the airplane went down somewhere, say over in the mountainous area, CAP would go out searching for this airplane. So that was one of the main jobs of CAP. And they also had an aerospace education program also.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So you, after the war ended and you were able to train here again, you kept this place running for maybe a decade or so more, a decade and a half?
Well, yeah, it was not just me. It was several other people. Charles Wren and William Taylor and some others. And we kept the airport. After John Green left, we ran the airport for about 8 years. And we did some training for the civilian pilot training program for Howard University. And then we were open to the general public also, you know. And people came down here to learn to fly, and people who were pilots came down here to rent airplanes and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Did it get easier, you know, after the war, you know, as far as being accepted, you know, for people who wanted to get into this field that were African American?
Well, you know, there was a mistake about aviation as far as black Americans are concerned. A lot of us felt that this was something that was not for us, and so therefore we just stayed away. We never took a real interest in it. But later on, we began to have a big influx of black people coming down here to learn to fly. And one of the guys that if my memory serves me right, is a big-time band leader, Jimmy Lunchford. You anybody remember him? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, he learned to fly down here. And there may be a few others whose names I can't remember.
Play, the piano and was the band leader. I forget his name right now, but he was here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you see, you know, us old timers, memory gets kind of clouded.
It be in, but not get between here and that car.
All right, so I think we're going to stop there.